Hello and welcome to the Bigger Than Us podcast. I'm your host, Raj Daniels, and today I'd like to welcome Jake Rozmaryn to the show. Jake Rozmaryn has spent the past decade advancing clean tech industries through marketing innovation. He has helped launch dozens of clean tech and smart mobility startups, is a trusted advisor to CEOs and VCs, and was recognized on the Forbes 30 Under 30 list in 2018. He previously founded Eco Branding, which was acquired by Antenna in 2017, an integrated marketing communications agency. And he currently serves as Senior Vice President of Strategy and Business Development at Antenna, the largest clean tech marketing and public relations agency in North America. Jake, how are you doing today?
Doing well, working from home, no complaints. Good to be on today.
So, where is home, Jake?
Home is New York City. I live in Brooklyn, New York.
How's the weather up there?
It's not too bad. A little chilly, a little rainy. But everyone's inside right now, so pretty comfortable inside, I suppose.
How does New York look with the streets empty?
It looks. I mean, it's certainly it's quieter, so it sounds quieter, but it's it's still a limited sun from the tall buildings, and it's still the same old New York. Everyone's getting together, and everyone's on the same page here. I think people are listening. Everyone I talk to staying home. Good to see that people are following the rules right now.
Good to hear that. Well, Jake, I like to start the show by asking my guest the following question. If you were asked to share something interesting about yourself, what would it be?
Probably that I've been starting businesses pretty much my whole life. Since I was 8 years old was my first official business, but even before that, I was doing other things, and just something that's been a part of my DNA forever.
What kind of business did you have at 8 years old?
At 8 years old, I had a company called House of Pokemon. And I wasn't especially interested in Pokemon, but a lot of my friends were. And so I saw an opportunity to buy and sell and trade Pokemon cards. And I did that on eBay, which is like the really early days of eBay. I did that on a quick website that I had popped up, which at the time was houseofpokemon.com. Just kind of in school, like behind the school buses, had a little briefcase that I brought with my catalog.
So it's very interesting. I've been involved in some kind of business since I was about 11 years old, and I'm always curious. And perhaps in your case, you can expand. What is that entrepreneurial bug? Because I can tell you from my case, it's not always for the money. So what is it?
I think it's just being excited about growing something, right? And you see an opportunity, it's like, ooh, I wonder what I can do with that. And you're right, it's not, I think there's usually going to be easier ways to make money, but there's a rush to it, right? It's exciting, like creating something from nothing. And then seeing things progress and getting traction and getting that, those first customers and getting that first customer that's like, hey, this was a great experience. This was awesome, right? It's an adrenaline, rush. And I think that's something that always motivated me.
I totally agree about the adrenaline rush. It's always nice to be able to fulfill someone's needs and be able to continue to quote unquote, satisfy customers and keep them coming back. So totally agree with that. And since we're on the topic of business, can you share a little bit about your current endeavor?
Yeah, absolutely. So my current endeavor is Antenna Group, where I am the Senior Vice President of Strategy and Business Development, overseeing specifically the clean tech and mobility practice at Antenna. And so Antenna is an integrated marketing and public relations agency that focuses on four primary themes. So clean tech and mobility are two, real estate technology is a third, and then healthcare is a fourth. And that's a lot of digital health technologies and medtech, biotech, pharma technologies as well.
And what's some of the services you provide to your clean tech companies?
We're a full service agency, so we've got teams focused on public relations, digital marketing, sales and marketing automation, web development, branding, social media, messaging strategy, campaign planning, go-to-market strategy. I mean, we've a pretty wide range of services. Some companies use us for a few things, and other companies use us as an end-to-end marketing department, sort of a plug-and-play marketing department that can work alongside their team.
Now, if I read your bio correctly, you've been in the clean tech space for about 10 years. Is that correct?
That is correct. I started pretty young. I got into this at age 20, working at the Solar Energy Industries Association, supporting Maryland, DC, and Virginia. So I was still at the University of Maryland at the time. Got interested in the space, and spent my whole career has been very closely tied to the solar industry, but over the years expanded into all these other areas and across the energy technology spectrum, and then kind of broader clean tech sphere.
So, two questions: how have you seen the solar industry change in the last 10 years, and then clean tech from a broader perspective?
Yeah, so I think the solar industry, I mean, like everyone talks about the solar coaster. That's like that's the word. I kind of cringe when I hear it at this point. But everything's just gotten more mature. Companies are more mature. The business models are more mature. You're seeing costs come down in a very substantial way, both hard costs and soft costs for projects. You're seeing like on the new business, in terms of new business models, I think community solar is like a mega trend that we're really excited about, and think it's a really great opportunity for the market. So yeah, I mean it's all the right things happening, right? Like new finance mechanisms that are making it easier to go solar. You're seeing more policy initiatives at state levels and local levels that are creating more opportunity for companies and improving the economics. And so I think when I first got into the industry, it was very much about sustainability, and there was this really high price tag associated with it, and then it as the economics shifted, it became more of a financial argument, and that I think became that was a huge impetus for growth in the industry. And now I think the economic undertone is still very prominent, but the resilience angle is really important now, with more hurricanes and fires, and I mean there's just lots of volatility, both natural volatility and just uncertainty in different parts of the economy, and that's become more attractive. So yeah, I mean I think overall it's been super exciting to see this go from an industry that had at that point I think like 50,000 people to an industry that is over 400,000 directly, but indirectly millions if you incorporate the entire supply chain.
I appreciate the term solar coaster. I'd never heard that before.
Yeah, it's it's a good representation of the crazy ups and downs that the industry has faced over the years, with the different solar ITC battles, trade tariffs, big prominent bankruptcies like Solyndra years ago. Yeah, so that's it's been a very interesting industry to track for over the last decade.
And you mentioned community solar. Can you expand on that a little bit, please?
Yeah, community solar is where instead of putting solar panels on your roof, you can virtually subscribe to a community solar garden, which would more closely resemble like a larger utility scale solar project or a large commercial solar project typically. And so that's going to be virtually metered, and generally you're able to save some money, and then also source your energy from clean energy, which is obviously a plus. So we're seeing a lot of growth in the community solar market, specifically in places like Minnesota, Colorado, Massachusetts, New York, Illinois, and then there are markets popping up all over the country now. Probably 15 or so markets that are seeing some real movement at this point.
Thank you. So you've been in the space for 10 years. From the broader clean tech space, what new technologies or even old technologies are exciting you right now?
So for new technologies, I think there's the growth of artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things, and just advances in automation. I think is like this really interesting trifecta that's taking place. And so some of the things that are getting me especially excited today, it's things where you have smart home automation, where you're able to connect all of the energy assets in your home or other anything that generates, stores, consumes energy, and add automated optimizations that are going to increase efficiency, save money, make things more convenient, give you people more visibility into what they're doing, but also basically take that control over the different parts of their home. Because I think the automation part is, I think, really important, because people have spent a ton of time and a ton of money in developing apps for consumers to understand their energy better, track your solar production, right? And you look at the number of people that actually look at their solar production after the first month on some dashboard, right? Like that number is really, really small. And so just because people don't want to think about this stuff, right? They want things that are set it and forget it. So I think if we can automate more of these activities within the home and within commercial buildings, and across different sectors, I think ultimately we're going to be able to capture some really cool efficiency benefits, while also creating better experiences for businesses and consumers.
Very interesting. So switching gears a little bit, the story behind this conversation is the why you're doing what you're doing. And so you've been in the industry 10 years now. You were younger, in college. What drove you to get involved with this, clean tech industry back then?
So back then, I had gotten I had an internship earlier in college at a Middle East think tank that was putting out tons of content about how foreign oil influences U.S. policy, and that just did not sit right with me. And I was really, I became like fascinated, just obsessed with this dynamic of how U.S. government decision making was being made, and so it got to this point where I was like, this is like a national security thing. Like, we should be creating energy locally, and it should, and then the sustainability side of it actually came after. And now obviously that's hugely important to me. But it was first from the lens of national security and creating local jobs, and just that whole side of it. And then then solar became a big part of it, and to be part of the solution. And when I look at my current endeavor, and why it's ultimately so important to me, is that we have this really cool opportunity to see lots of different technologies and amazing companies and business models, where we can actually have a material impact on how they perform in the market, right? Like we're like actually building the clean tech market leaders, and bringing greater understanding and awareness to complex industries that are solving critical global challenges and helping to commercialize these companies in the market. So that is super compelling to me.
So, if I hear you correctly, I almost feel like you went into this from a patriotic standpoint.
Yeah, you could say that.
That's
That's
really
accurate.
interesting. That's the first time I've heard that answer. It's a very interesting answer because as I think about the broader landscape and the people that are, you know, for or against some of this clean tech, I don't really ever hear that conversation, leading the charge. What have you seen?
I think the natural instinct today is to come at it from the sustainability side, but at that point in my life, I didn't understand that dynamic as much. And as I got closer to it, obviously was very big. But I do think that um, the idea of national security and creating local jobs and really coming at it from like an economic impact, I think that's something that is a huge driving force, right? Like, the when you see state chapter, renewable energy chapters like lobbying, at the state level to get policies in place for solar, right? Like their first talking point is the economic growth, right, and economic development opportunity and creating local jobs, and right, you can't outsource solar installations to China, right? Like, so that talking point has always been very present. I just think that that's how I arrived at things first.
So, tell me a little bit more about this Mideast think tank.
Yeah, so going back a while, but yeah, at that point, a big focus for them was to help expose the relationship between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia, and what ultimately U.S. money was funding in Saudi Arabia. So, like, yes, we're getting oil and all these things, but we're also helping to sponsor like very radical activities, Wahhabism, and those types of ideologies. And so, that just did not necessarily sit right with me.
So, would you have considered yourself patriotic before that think tank?
Yeah, yeah. I'm born here, and this country is a pretty amazing place, and has been a great place for my family for a few generations. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that's always something that I'm cognizant of.
So, a question I like to ask my guest is if you could share some advice or words of wisdom with the audience, what would it be?
It might be cliche, but everything throughout my life has been guided by passion. Like I used to say that we're in our boilerplate, in the company boilerplate, it was we're a passion driven organization, right? And for me, it's passion is what keeps you motivated. It drives you to accomplish great things, and critically, it helps to attract and retain like-minded team members, right? And if you surround yourself with a group of smart and passionate people, then there's a lot of things that you can do. And in a changing business climate, where you constantly have to be pivoting, and like you want those types of people around you, and I think people are drawn to passion. So I think it's a very powerful tool.
So, I love the idea of passion. How do you keep the passion going?
Challenge yourself. Try to look at how to stay one step ahead of the curve. I think that's been interesting for us. Like in our business, right? Like we used to be more focused on traditional public relations, and if we only focused on traditional public relations, then we'd probably be a dinosaur today, right? And so we went through our own digital transformation and created new services and business models around what we're doing, in order to support our clients in new ways. And that's a huge part of our business today is based off of that transformation. And that's just like, that's all being driven by, our passion to continue to grow companies and grow them in ways that will enable them to, reach their audiences in new and compelling ways and tell their story in new and compelling ways. And, so I think that's, it's how it kind of manifests with our work day to day.
So, since you mentioned business climate, for those of you that might not be aware, we are recording right now during the time of the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic. And Jake and I were speaking briefly earlier, and I'd like to get your view, Jake, on, perhaps some of the changes that we might see, or perhaps some of the risks that you and your company are looking at right now with your clients.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly an interesting time for our business and for our clients. There's definitely a recession taking place, and it's going to impact pretty much every part of the economy. I think with a lot of the things that we do, it's more about just the shifting of strategy. Right, where you have a lot of conferences canceled right now or postponed. So companies are, they still have to get along with their business. They still have things that they need to do in the market and need to be getting out there. So, a lot of the strategies are shifting towards digital marketing, for example, or other forms of, lead generation activities that are not tied to in-person events. So it's forcing people to rethink a lot of what they're doing. Right, everyone's working from home. Everything is moving to a video conference. So I think we're only a few weeks into this here in the U.S. Obviously, it's been worse in China and Europe so far. But yeah, I mean, I think everyone's sort of adjusting to this new normal. But I think everyone is eager for this to pass. Everyone's eager to get back to work. And we were talking about this earlier. I think the uncertainty is the biggest piece here, and I likened it to like a bad hurricane, where it's like we all know it's going to pass, but what is the destruction going to look like, right? Like left in its left from the episode, right? So I'm certainly nervous about the economic fallout. I have a lot of empathy, sympathy for the service industry and just industries in general that are particularly affected by this. Look at think about the economies around just pro sports, right? Like think about it, yeah, you have the teams, but there's entire economies built around these industries, and they are at a grinding halt, right? Like some groups are just like the efficiency's down, right? And maybe some of their projects get held up, but those projects are gonna for the most part move forward, right? For a lot of these, for restaurants, for a lot of these events, like there's they're not a lot of this stuff is not being made up. People aren't going and eating 2 meals next month, for dinner. They're having 2 dinners next month because they didn't have one of the dinners at the restaurant the month before, right? So, I mean, it's really scary time for business trying to navigate this this new normal.
I really appreciate that, Jake. And this has been a great conversation. Is there anything that we have not explored that you'd like to talk about or share before we go?
Anything that we haven't talked about. I think one thing that is particularly interesting, it's just something that I've been thinking a lot about right now, is how we define clean tech. And I'd be curious to get your perspective on this, because clean tech historically has been kind of viewed as its own umbrella term, right? So it's like you have clean tech, and within that you have renewables and LED lighting and energy efficiency and electric vehicles. And I think we're at this really interesting place where the term has become so broad that it's less about what is included within the clean tech ecosystem and more about how clean tech is applied to every part of the economy. And I think you're seeing that really across every part of the economy. You're seeing clean tech themes, are these undertones that are making its way in. And so, whether it's alternative proteins making gains on meat, or carbon capture, and using that as an ingredient in cement, right? Or prop tech taking center stage in the real estate industry, or sustainable fashion taking over fast fashion. So I think that we're kind of going through this period right now where the lens is shifting, and I think that opens tons of opportunities for people that are looking to get into these sectors, and find opportunities within these sectors. Is that kind of consistent with things that you've seen in the market? Like, do you feel a similar sense that the term is much broader today than it has been historically?
I do, and thank you for asking. I feel like, to your point, the lens is not shifting so much, the lens is widening, growing. I appreciate all the efforts. We've had numerous conversations here at the company with other companies that are exploring fast fashion ideas. You mentioned alternative protein. Specifically, in our case, it was cricket protein and black soldier flies. So I appreciate the fact that it's widening, because I feel like it becomes more inclusive. And my personal feeling, not representing of the company, but my personal feeling is that whatever efforts can be done to mitigate some of the climate change, or some of the challenges with the planet, and also addressing the other two, whether it's the planet, the profit, people, it's the triple bottom line. Any efforts that can be done legitimately to improve those, I think, can be included in that clean tech statement.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, for sure. Yeah, and that's cool. I want to learn more about that cricket protein. That sounds cool. I've heard a few things similar to that, but yeah, we'll take that offline.
Well, happy to
Um,
share offline.
yeah, I think kind of on like a similar tone. We've seen over the last few months, climate pledges. Really, I mean, over the last year or so, you've seen just this um, unbelievable growth of clean tech focused venture funds and private equity funds. You've seen corporations going in, making massive pledges, like Microsoft going carbon negative, or the Jeff Bezos, New Earth Fund, $10 billion. So you're seeing all of these things. You're seeing all of these huge market signals that you would think, like, okay, this is going to be an amazing time for clean tech. And now you have this situation with coronavirus, COVID-19. I think it's going to be really interesting to see, what happens with all of this money and all this pledge, all these great pledges, when there is this retraction in the economy. And so, on one hand, I'm thinking about it in terms of, is all this money going to provide, a form of stimulus to these markets? Or are some of these things going to be pulled back? I'm curious if you have, if you've thought about that at all, or any thoughts on that?
I have thought about it a little, and I feel like certain areas are going to see a stimulus. We talked about jobs briefly offline, and I think that since we have this challenge right now, perhaps some of the individuals that are participating in these, perhaps shift work or the QSR industry, will maybe look for something that's more stable over the next decade or so. And we have a lady here in Dallas. Her name is Tracy, and she has a training program for people in the underprivileged areas for solar installations. Now, solar installations might dip during this time period, but people might be able to go through some kind of training program which would better equip them going forward to participate in some of these green tech, clean tech opportunities.
Yeah, I think that type of vocational training is going to be super helpful for these industries. And I think that the industries also just benefit from having people come from other industries, right? Because sometimes you can have some of that tunnel, you have kind of tunnel vision, right? And you're going to get stuck in your ways. And so having that perspective from, outside industries, I think is really, really cool. I think that's why I love the Clean Start program. I don't know if you're familiar with that program out of NYU, but that is meant for executives that are pretty accomplished in their careers and usually been in their fields for some time, that are from a very wide range of industries, finance or engineering or advertising or all these areas, and then they basically do like a boot camp to retool their skills for the clean economy and then put them into local and national clean tech companies for capstone projects, which give them that credential that they can put onto their resume. So it helps to kind of accelerate the transition into the clean economy. I think that is a great. I think the vocational training is great. But I think that those types of programs can be hugely successful, if they're replicated across the country, to take some of that star power talent from other industries and inject it to supercharge parts of the clean economy.
I appreciate you sharing that. I'll look into that and put the link in the show notes. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jake, it's been a pleasure. I really appreciate your time today, and I look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Absolutely. Take care. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. And if you like what you heard, please give us a rating and review at Apple Podcast. Bigger Than Us is a Nexus PMG production. And if you want to show your support and help us grow, please share with a friend or reach out to us on social media, where you'll find us under our Nexus PMG handle.